Hey everyone, let's dive right into today's explainer. Today, we are cracking open John Coley's The Curse of Mr. M's Castle. Now, at a quick glance, you might think, okay, standard middle grade adventure story, right? But actually, we're going to explore some genuinely surprising discoveries waiting for readers inside this book, a place where fiction, ancient folklore, and absolute reality completely collide. We're really going to focus on one big, fascinating question today. What are some of the most surprising discoveries you'll actually make while enjoying this book? Because what kicks off as this fun, slightly spooky mystery, well, it actually hides an entire blueprint of hidden truths. So the story hooks you immediately with this massive curiosity gap. What exactly does happen when a fourth grade woodworking club accidentally unboxes a Scottish curse? The book just drops us right into our main character, Griffin's, incredibly strange first day of fourth grade. Imagine walking into class expecting, the usual rules, the standard schedules, only to find your teacher, Mr. McAllister, who happens to have a giant red beard, standing there wearing a full Scottish kilt. And if that isn't enough, he introduces the class to a very old and apparently very active Viking chest that he just got from his ancestral home, McAllister Castle. Almost immediately, Griffin is pretty sure he hears this chest moving on its own. Now, one of the first really cool surprises for the reader is how the author actually structures this narrative. Coley uses authentic translated Scottish proverbs to introduce every single chapter. It's a fantastic touch. Take this specific proverb, for instance. A good beginning makes a good ending. It perfectly sets the stage for Griffin and his friends, Garrett and Sarah, joining this newly formed woodworking club. It subtly tells the reader, hey, this isn't just a spooky mystery, it's also a story about craftsmanship, about patience, and about starting things off on the right foot. And that idea of craftsmanship sets up our next big discovery, which is the progression of the kids' surprisingly complex real-world skills. In a lot of stories, an after-school club is, just a backdrop. But here, it's highly procedural. Over the course of the semester, we actually watch this trio level up. They start out using simple handsaws to cut 5-foot boards in half to make Viking chairs, which are also known as African stools. Then, by month 2, they're using circular saws and wood glue to build a garden bench. By month 4, they're using jigsaws and pocket wood planes to meticulously carve a wooden McAllister clan badge. It's such a surprising discovery to find actual, step-by-step woodworking instructions seamlessly woven right into the plot of a fantasy book. But it's definitely not all sawdust and wood glue. As those chapter-heading Scottish proverbs start turning a little darker, the story does too. Really strange things start happening in Mr. M's classroom. A kindergartner named Nevaeh is absolutely terrified by a phantom giant snake that bursts out of the chest, and she ends up backing into a wall and needing Nurse Katie. A bit later, a group of straight-A students having lunch in the room are sent into a total panic by a massive swarm of spiders that just vanish into thin air. It becomes clear pretty quickly that whatever is inside that Viking chest is directly feeding off the specific fears of the kids who peek inside. So, of course, the mystery becomes, what exactly is this thing? Well, Sarah, who is the resident bookworm of the group, does some digging and uncovers the crux of the folklore. The chest contains a boggart. A boggart is this corrupted, shape-shifting creature of fear. But here is the really fascinating twist. It didn't start out that way. It actually used to be a brownie, which is a helpful creature of blessing that used to care for the castle. But after centuries of being terrified and constantly agitated by rowdy tourists at the real McAllister Castle, its defense mechanisms basically went into overdrive, completely corrupting it into a boggart. Okay, and here is where the lore gets super deep, with a historical anchor that I think is a profound discovery for the reader. The book explains that these creatures, they were originally just ordinary woodland animals. We're talking squirrels, mice, hedgehogs, but their souls were permanently transformed when they witnessed the real-world execution of a historical figure named John Brown. Now, John Brown was a man executed by the king's order simply for reading the holy word in the native language to families out in the woods. When his blood was spilled right in front of them, the animals were changed forever, taking on his name to become brownies. Grounding a magical fantasy creature in actual heavy political history just brings this remarkable layer of depth to the whole story. Realizing that this terrifying boggart is actually just a deeply traumatized brownie changes absolutely everything for the kids. Guided by that ancient wisdom we talked about, Griffin, Garrett, and Sarah make a really bold choice. They decide to hatch this incredibly risky plan to heal the creature rather than fight it. They realize, quite smartly, that trying to combat a creature of literal fear with more violence or more fear, that's only going to make the curse so much worse. So what's the cure? Well, it's surprisingly procedural, just like their woodworking. Step 1. Face the fear. Griffin bravely climbs directly into this bottomless Viking box. And instead of spiders or snakes, his own ultimate fear manifests as total, inky black nothingness, along with a vision of his own face in absolute despair. Step 2. Show compassion. Instead of panicking and running away, Griffin reaches out to this bony, terrified creature that's cowering in the dark. And finally, Step 3. The antidote. He heals the boggart by feeding it honey. The honey soothes its mind and actually begins its physical transformation back into a furry, helpful brownie. Now, just when you think the curse is broken and the story is all wrapped up nicely, the book drops its biggest secret in the addendum. Honestly, this might be the ultimate discovery for the reader. The author peels back this final layer to reveal that almost everything you just read about, the setting, the people, the activities, is heavily based on reality. Let's break down some of these crazy real-world connections. It turns out that ancestral Scottish home, not just a fantasy setting, it is the real-life Glenbar Abbey in Scotland. Lady McAllister is an actual real person who hosts visitors there. The castle literally possesses a room with a collection of rare toys. And remember that wooden clan badge the kids painstakingly crafted? The one with the hand holding a dagger and the motto Fortiter, meaning boldly? That is the exact actual badge of the real-world McAllister clan. And it doesn't stop with the locations. The real-world connections extend directly to the characters themselves. The author drew incredibly deeply from his own life here. The trio of Griffin, Garrett, and Sarah, they are based on actual, real-life kids from the author's own school, complete with their very distinct personalities. Nurse Katie is a real school nurse, Mr. Cup is the author's real boss, and even Nevaeh, that terrified kindergartner we mentioned earlier, she is a real student that the author actually knew. And remember that super detailed woodworking timeline we walked through earlier? Yeah, that wasn't just some clever plot device to keep the kids busy. The author actually sponsored a real after-school woodworking club for his students. The real Griffin, Garrett, and Sarah actually built those exact Viking chairs and garden benches using real power tools. When you realize that, the book is practically a documentary of their after-school club, just brilliantly disguised as a fantasy novel. Even the magic itself, the antidote, turns out to be a surprising scientific discovery. Remember the chaotic, spooky science night where the kids made green slime and watched liquid nitrogen shrink balloons? That is an actual annual event at the author's school. And the honey they used to cure the creature? Well, honey is scientifically documented as a powerful antimicrobial agent. It's even been found perfectly preserved in ancient archaeological sites. The author took real, grounded science, combined it with historical lore, and blended them seamlessly to cure a mythical beast. How cool is that? So why do all this? Well, this brings us to the author's fascinating rationale. He wanted to use fiction to achieve a very real-world goal. John Coley specifically blended all these real-life elements into a magical narrative to encourage kids, and honestly, adults too, to get into woodworking, to learn how to physically build things with their own hands, and to just read more fiction. He used the super engaging wrapper of a Scottish curse to basically deliver a masterclass in maker culture and empathy. And that leaves us with a really powerful final takeaway from this explainer. The Curse of Mr. M's Castle absolutely proves that you do not have to invent some completely new, out-of-this-world universe to tell an incredible story. By just looking closely at your own seemingly ordinary life, your friends, your daily hobbies, your local history, you can discover absolute magic hiding right there in plain sight. So I challenge you, think about it. What ordinary elements in your day-to-day life are just waiting right now to be spun into your own extraordinary adventure?